My name is Emily Harper. I'm 32 years old, and just last Tuesday, my whole world flipped upside down when I checked my lottery ticket and realized I had $52 million won. I remember my hands trembling as I stared at those 6 numbers, perfectly lined up. When the initial shock wore off, a strange thought hit me right away. I wasn't going to tell a single soul about this money. You see, I've always had a messy history with my family when it comes to finances. And if you're listening to this right now, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. Before I share the details of this life-altering decision, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real stories about loyalty and betrayal within families, stories that might just change the way you see your own relationships. Sometimes I feel like my whole life has been lived in the shadow of other people's expectations. Willow Creek is the kind of small Midwestern town where everyone knows your family history before you even shake their hand. And if you're a Harper, like me, they know the good, the bad, and the gossip. I work as a bookkeeper in my family's hardware store. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. Most days I balance ledgers, chase down suppliers, and quietly keep things from falling apart while the store limps along in this economy. And yet, to my family, I'm just there, the dependable one, the one they can shrug off, the one nobody brags about. My parents divorced when I was in middle school, and that fracture never really healed. Dad, Tom Harper, remarried a flashy realtor named Vanessa who always wears heels too high for Main Street and perfumes strong enough to turn heads. She treats every room like it's an open house she's trying to sell, including family dinners. Mom, Karen, married Dale, a businessman who prides himself on being smart with money, which is really just a polite way of saying stingy. He'll drive across town to save 50 cents on gas, and he'll let you know about it 3 times over. Then there are my siblings. Megan is the golden child, married to a doctor, living in a big suburban house with a 2-car garage and vacations to Mexico. She knows exactly how to remind everyone of her perfect life, subtly, of course. Her nails are always polished. Her kids always dressed like catalog models. And Derek, my brother, well, he floats from one job to another, always with a reason why it wasn't his fault that it didn't work out. He borrows money from me like clockwork and forgets to pay it back just as reliably. The extended family doesn't make things easier. Uncle Victor can turn a Sunday barbecue into a courtroom, passing judgment on who's made something of themselves and who hasn't. Spoiler: I always fall into the second category in his eyes. His son, Brett, is entitled, loud, and convinced the world owes him comfort. But there's also Aunt Clara, thank God for her. She's my mother's sister, a school librarian who lives in a small 1-story house with stacks of books and a cat named Eloise. She doesn't have much, but she has a kind heart. And she's the only one who listens without secretly keeping score. If you saw me on any given Friday, you'd probably find me at the gas station on Main Street, sliding a few crumpled bills across the counter for a scratch-off ticket. It's my little guilty pleasure, the only indulgence I've allowed myself. My family teases me endlessly for it. Emily, you really think luck is going to bail you out? Megan smirks. Or Derek, if you've got money for tickets, you've got money to lend me. They don't know that for me, those tickets are about hope. About a tiny flicker that maybe, just maybe, my story won't always look the same. On my 32nd birthday, I sat at my small kitchen table with a cup of store-brand coffee, scratching away at one of those tickets. At first, I thought my tired eyes were playing tricks. Then my heart slammed in my chest so hard I could barely breathe. $52 million. That was the number staring back at me. My first instinct was pure shock. Then a rush of joy. Then, almost immediately, panic. Because I know this family. I know what money does to people who already measure worth in bank accounts and showy vacations. That night, after the shock softened just a little, I sat on my bed scrolling through articles about lottery winners, how so many of them went broke, how their families turned on them, how friends became enemies overnight. And I knew, with a clarity that felt cold and sharp, that if I told my family, it would destroy what little thread of connection we had left. They didn't value me now. Why would they respect me with millions in my name? So I made a choice. I didn't tell a soul. I contacted a lawyer, Marcus Reed, and together we set up a trust that would protect me and keep my name out of the headlines. And then, sitting there in his office with those legal papers in front of me, I thought about the cruel irony. The numbers that had just changed my life forever weren't random at all. They were my family's birthdays, Dad's, Mom's, Megan's, Derek's, even Aunt Clarice. For all the times they dismissed me, I still carried them with me in the back of my mind. And those dates had delivered me a fortune. What I didn't expect was how that knowledge lit a fire in me. Because I realized this was my chance, not just to escape their shadow, but to see them clearly. To test if there was any loyalty left beneath the selfishness. I promised myself that before I revealed anything, I'd find out who they truly were. And so, with the ticket safely locked away and my secret carefully guarded, I began planning the hardest, strangest test of my life. Keeping a secret that big feels like carrying a live wire in your pocket. Every time I walked into the hardware store, every time Megan barked orders or Derek strolled in late with that careless grin, I wanted to shout, "You have no idea who you're talking to." But I didn't. I smiled, I nodded, and I let them underestimate me, because I had a plan. Life at the store was the same old grind. Megan had taken it upon herself to manage operations, which in her language meant hovering over me, stealing credit for any good idea I had, and reminding me that I wasn't ambitious enough. Derek, on the other hand, treated the place like his personal hangout, disappearing for hours, leaving me to cover the counter and the books. It wasn't just the extra work, it was the disrespect. Every night I went home bone tired, telling myself, just keep going. Emily, you know something they don't. The only person I partially let in on my storm was Sophie. My best friend since high school. She teaches 4th grade and has this grounded way of seeing through people's nonsense. One night, over takeout on her couch, I told her a little piece of my truth, not the lottery win, but that I wanted to test my family's loyalty. She looked at me like I was holding a match over gasoline. Emily, you've got to be careful. People manipulate, especially family. Don't give them that chance. I have to know. Soph, I told her, picking at my fries. If I needed help, really needed it, who would show up? She sighed, leaned back against her couch pillows, and said, then rehearse it with me. Don't go in blind. And that's exactly what we did. I practiced my story. The store was cutting hours because of the economic slump. My rent was overdue. My car needed repairs. Altogether, I needed $6,000. It was believable enough, just desperate enough to make them choose. Sophie would play my dad or Megan, tossing excuses, cold refusals, little digs. I practiced staying calm, swallowing my pride, keeping my voice steady. It was harder than I thought. My chest burned just imagining their responses. But I told myself, better to be ready for the no than to be blindsided. The first real test came with Dad. I drove over to his house, well, Vanessa's house. If we're being honest, the place smelled like designer candles. And Vanessa opened the door in silk loungewear like she was waiting for a magazine photo shoot. Dad listened as I explained my situation. He furrowed his brow, but it wasn't concern, it was that disappointed dad look he's perfected. Emily, maybe if you'd made smarter choices, you wouldn't be in this bind. Vanessa nodded like a bobblehead. No offer of help, just a lecture about responsibility. I thanked them, walked out, and sat in my car gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles hurt. Megan was next. We met at her favorite cafe, where she ordered a latte that probably cost more than I'd spend on groceries for a week. I laid it out for her, $6,000. Rent, car. She smiled that tight smile of hers and said, let me check with James. James, the doctor husband. I knew what that meant. She was passing the buck. A week went by, then 2. No reply. When I followed up, she ghosted me, like I hadn't even asked. Derek was easier. I didn't even get a face-to-face. I sent him a text. And his response came back in seconds, can't help. No explanation, no sorry, no nothing, just 2 words. The hardest moment, though, wasn't the asks themselves, it was the family dinner in between. Uncle Victor went on about how some people never learn financial discipline. Staring right at me like I was his lecture prop. Brett bragged about some investment opportunity he was chasing, then asked if Dad might bankroll him. I sat there, chewing dry chicken, swallowing down the sting of every side glance, every mocking tone. My throat tightened, but I smiled politely, sipping water while my insides churned. Driving home that night, the streetlights blurred through my windshield. I kept replaying every word, every dismissive shrug. They thought I was unstable. They thought I was weak. But what they didn't know was that every rejection was fuel. Every lecture, every silence, every smirk, it hardened my resolve. I wasn't doing this for their approval anymore. I was doing it to prove to myself that I didn't need it. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I was calm again. The plan was working. They were revealing themselves exactly as I expected. And yet, in the quiet of my little house, A whisper of doubt crept in. Would any of them surprise me? Would any of them choose me over themselves? That night, as I tucked the winning ticket back into its hiding place, I promised myself, this wasn't about revenge. This was about clarity, and I was ready for whatever came next. By the time I hit the third week of asking, I was running on fumes, not financially, but emotionally. It's one thing to imagine your family turning their backs on you, but it's something else to actually hear it in their voices, to see it in their eyes. Mom was next on my list. I met her and Dale at their kitchen table, where Dale always kept the thermostat set low, like saving a few dollars on heating was his life's mission. Mom listened as I explained, her face soft with sympathy. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd reach for her checkbook. But then she sighed and said, Emily, you know we just came back from that cruise. Money's tight right now, maybe next month? Dale didn't even look up from his laptop. He just muttered, we can't keep bailing her out. My stomach clenched. Bailing me out? I had never once asked them for help. Vanessa, my stepmom, was no surprise. She poured herself a glass of wine while I talked, swirling it like she was auditioning for a commercial. Then she launched into a lecture about budgeting and how young people waste too much on frivolous things. I wanted to scream. Do you even remember the thousands you borrowed from me 2 Christmases ago? But I didn't. I just nodded, thanked her, and walked away. Megan strung me along for another week before finally ghosting me completely. No call, no text, just silence. And Derek, well, Derek was Derek. His can't help text still glowed on my phone like a neon sign, reminding me of exactly where I stood in his world. Cousin Brett, of course, was all talk. Don't worry, I've got you, he said when I called him. But days passed, nothing. When I followed up, he changed the subject to some new get-rich-quick scheme he wanted to brag about. Uncle Victor didn't even bother pretending. He just shook his head and said, maybe this will teach you to pick a better career path. Each conversation chipped away at me. It wasn't about the $6,000, it was about what those refusals revealed. They didn't see me as family. Not really. They saw me as the fallback, the background character. By the end of it, I felt like I'd been wrung dry. Nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, tears slipping down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. If I mattered so little when I was asking for help, how would they treat me if they knew I held millions? And then, just when I thought I knew the ending to this story, Aunt Clara called. She'd heard whispers from Victor, of course. The gossip always spread faster than wildfire in Willow Creek. She didn't wait for me to come to her. She picked up the phone, her voice gentle but steady. Emily, honey, I heard you're having a hard time. Can we meet? We sat in her cozy little living room surrounded by books and the smell of cinnamon tea. I tried to brush it off, tried to insist I was fine. But she pressed her hand over mine. Don't lie to me. Tell me what you need. My throat burned as I told her the same story I'd told everyone else. I needed $6,000 to stay afloat. Clara didn't hesitate. She went into her bedroom and came back with an envelope, the edges worn from being tucked away. Inside was $4,000. She pushed it across the table to me. My hands shook as I opened it. I knew what that money meant to her. It wasn't extra. It wasn't easy. This was her savings. Money she should have used for her own health, her own comfort. Clara, I can't take this, I whispered. She looked me dead in the eye and said, Emily, family is supposed to show up. If no one else does, I will, always. That was it. The dam broke. Hot tears spilled down my face. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself cry in front of someone. She didn't shame me, didn't scold me, didn't ask what I'd done wrong. She just held my hand and let me be. Later that night, curiosity gnawed at me. I did some quiet digging and found out she'd been skipping doses of her arthritis medication just to save a little extra. My chest ached when I realized what that envelope had cost her. And that's when my decision crystallized. This was the person I could trust. This was the soul who had chosen love over judgment, sacrifice over selfishness. I couldn't keep lying to her. So I called her back the next day. Clara, can you come over tonight? There's something I need to tell you. And as I waited for her knock on my door, the weight of the secret pressed heavier than ever. Because once I opened my mouth, there was no turning back. When Aunt Clara walked into my house that evening, I swear I felt my whole body unclench. She didn't bring judgment or suspicion with her. Just that soft, steady presence she always carried. Like a warm blanket on a cold night. I set the kettle on the stove, poured us tea, and sat across from her at my little kitchen table. My heart pounded so hard I was afraid she'd hear it. I need to tell you something, I said, my voice shaking. And it's going to sound insane. She tilted her head, waiting, not rushing me. That's the thing about Clara, she always gave you space to find your words. So I told her. I admitted that the story about losing hours at the store, the rent, the car repairs, it was all a lie. I told her why I lied. About the test, about the rejections, about how broken I felt each time my own family chose themselves over me. And then I told her the truth. On my birthday, I won the lottery, $52 million. Her eyes widened. She didn't gasp or clutch her chest like in some dramatic movie scene. She just sat there, stunned, her mouth parting slightly as she tried to process what I'd said. Emily, she whispered, almost to herself. Then she leaned back, let out a slow breath, and shook her head. Well, I'll be damned. I laughed, a choked, nervous laugh, and tears welled up again. I couldn't tell anyone. I couldn't trust anyone, except you. You were the only one who gave when you didn't have to. Clara reached across the table and took my hand. Emily, money doesn't change people. It just shows you who they've been all along. I learned that the hard way when my ex ran off with my savings years ago. The truth is, you don't owe anyone in this family a thing. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was just awake. But of course, Willow Creek being Willow Creek, the secret didn't stay secret for long. I hadn't told anyone else. But gossip has a way of bending truth into whatever shape it wants. Within days, family texts started rolling in. Accusations. How could you manipulate us like that? So you lied to your own mother? You need serious help. Not one message asked how I was doing, or why I might have felt so desperate in the first place. They twisted it all into my fault. My instability, my supposed betrayal, and I'll admit, for a moment, I almost caved. I almost felt guilty. But then I remembered Clara's words. Money doesn't change people. It shows them for who they are. So instead of feeding the fire, I went quiet. I met with Marcus, my lawyer, and we worked out something I knew in my heart I wanted, setting up a trust for Clara. Enough to cover her healthcare, her retirement, her peace. She tried to argue, of course. Said it was too much. I told her it was nothing compared to what she'd already given me. Proof that love still existed in this family. The real shock came later. At a family barbecue. Everyone was there. Of course, Megan and James showing off their new SUV. Derek half drunk on beer. Uncle Victor already loud before the grill was even lit. I showed up calm, collected, with Clara by my side. When the questions started, so, how's that little job of yours? Still struggling to make ends meet? I smiled. And then I told them. Actually, I'm doing great. I just started a new nonprofit job. I'm building a foundation to help low-income families in town. Dead silence. They blinked at me like I'd started speaking another language. Derek laughed, sharp and mocking. Megan cleared her throat. That's ambitious, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. That's when I felt something shift inside me. I looked right at them, at Derek, at Megan, at Uncle Victor, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. Funny thing about helping people, I said evenly, it doesn't come with strings attached. It's about showing up when someone needs you. Kind of like how I've shown up for this family more times than I can count. Loans that were never repaid. Favors no one remembers. And when I asked for help, what did I get? Excuses. Silence. Mockery. The whole backyard went quiet. You could have heard the cicadas in the trees. Megan's face flushed. Derek looked away. And even Victor pressed his lips together. For once, no one had a comeback. I didn't tell them about the lottery. I didn't need to. All I wanted was for them to see themselves in that mirror I held up. Whether they liked it or not. That night, when I got home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Because now the balance had shifted. I wasn't the overlooked, underestimated Emily anymore. I was the one setting boundaries, calling out hypocrisy, and walking away without looking back. And as I locked my front door, I thought about what was next. Quietly, behind the scenes, I could use this money to change lives. Maybe even theirs, in ways they'd never know. And the irony of it all? That was the sweetest freedom of all. After that barbecue, something in the air shifted. My family didn't cut me off completely. But they didn't exactly come closer either. It was like I'd stepped out of the role they'd always cast me in. And they didn't know how to handle it. The group texts grew quieter. When I did hear from them, it was polite, distant, almost like they were talking to a neighbor and not their own sister or daughter. Part of me expected the silence to hurt more than it did. But honestly, it was a relief. No more guilt-tripping phone calls from Derek. No more sideways comments from Megan about my lack of ambition. No more lectures from Uncle Victor about responsibility. They retreated into their world. And for the first time, I got to build mine. I used some of my winnings to buy 2 modest homes in a quiet little suburb just outside Willow Creek, one for me and one for Clara. She tried to argue, said she didn't need a whole house. But I just smiled and told her it was payback for every kindness she'd shown me when no one else bothered. Watching her move in, arranging her bookshelves and setting up Eloise's cat bed by the window, I felt a kind of joy I can't even put into words. That was also when I brought Harper Haven to life. On paper, it was just a nonprofit foundation. But to me, it was my way of turning every ounce of pain into purpose. The mission was simple: help overlooked, struggling members of the community who just needed a break. People like me, people who were told they weren't enough. Sophie jumped in right away, quitting her teaching job to become our coordinator. She told me she'd never seen me this alive before. And she was right. For the first time, I wasn't chasing scraps of validation, I was creating something of my own. The ripple effects started showing almost immediately. Within 6 months, Harper Haven helped families pay overdue utility bills, covered medical treatments insurance didn't touch, even supplied tools and training for small-town folks to start their own businesses. Every story reminded me that dignity was worth more than money, but sometimes money could buy the breathing room people needed to find it. Meanwhile, my family watched from the sidelines. They didn't know the truth, of course. To them, I had just lucked into a decent job with a foundation. Megan called once, her voice a little too sweet, asking for advice on starting a community outreach project at her church. I could hear the edge of regret under her tone, but not an ounce of apology. Derek showed up unannounced one evening, beer on his breath, talking about some amazing startup idea that just needed seed money. I listened, nodded, and told him gently that I couldn't. His face fell, and he muttered something about family sticking together before he stumbled out into the night. I'd be lying if I said those moments didn't sting. A part of me still longed for them to see me, not the money, not the image, just me, but I'd learned enough by then to know I couldn't control their hearts. What I could control was mine. So I drew new lines. With my family, I stayed polite, cordial, but I didn't chase their approval anymore. I didn't explain myself, didn't defend my choices. I showed up when I wanted to, left when I needed to, and stopped apologizing for either. And with Clara and Sophie, I poured myself into real relationships, the kind built on laughter, shared dinners, small kindnesses. One evening, almost a year after that first scratch-off changed everything, I sat in the Harper Haven office after hours, looking through a stack of thank you letters from families we'd helped. Kids drawing crayon hearts, parents writing shaky words of gratitude, neighbors who said they'd finally been able to breathe. My chest swelled with something I'd never gotten from any bank account, any approval, any family gathering. It was pride, quiet, steady pride in who I had become. But then, as I switched off the lights and locked the door behind me, I couldn't shake one thought. What happens when Derek comes back? Because I knew he would. People like him always do. And when he did, I'd have to choose again, between the sister who always bailed him out and the woman I had become. The day Derek came back wasn't dramatic the way I thought it would be. No shouting, no big showdown. He just showed up at my doorstep one rainy evening, soaked through, carrying nothing but a duffel bag that looked like it had seen better days. His eyes were hollow, his usual charm stripped away, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see my brother the manipulator, I just saw a tired, broken man. He asked if he could come in. I paused longer than I probably should have, but then I stepped aside. We sat in silence for a while, the sound of rain filling the space between us. Finally, he started talking, not with excuses, not with schemes, but with a kind of raw honesty I'd never heard from him. He admitted he'd burned every bridge, that he'd pushed away everyone who cared, and that he didn't even know who he was without the constant chase for more. And here's the thing, I believed him. Or at least, I believed that he wanted to be believed. For a moment, my heart wavered, old habits tugged at me. That voice whispering, he's your brother, you're supposed to fix him. But another voice, stronger now, reminded me, I wasn't put on this earth to be Derek's safety net. I could offer kindness without sacrificing myself. So I told him the truth. I said, I love you, Derek, but I can't save you. If you want to change, you've got to do the work. I'll point you to the right resources. But I won't bankroll your chaos anymore. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He just nodded, eyes wet, and whispered, "Fair enough." That was the last time I saw him for a while. Whether he turned things around or fell back into old patterns, that part of the story isn't mine to tell. What mattered was that, for once, I let go of the weight I'd been dragging my whole life. And letting go, it didn't mean bitterness. It meant freedom. Because forgiveness, I realized, isn't about saying, "What you did was okay." It's about saying, "I won't let what you did hold me prisoner anymore." I forgave Derek. I forgave Megan for her coldness. My parents for their blind spots. Even Uncle Victor for his arrogance. Not for them, but for me, so I could move on. Life now? It's not perfect, but it's mine. Harper Haven continues to grow. Clara is thriving in her new house. Eloise has taken to sunbathing like the queen she is. And Sophie and I have built a friendship that feels like family in the truest sense of the word. And me? I've stopped waiting for my family's approval to validate me. I've stopped apologizing for existing. I spend my days helping people who once felt invisible. And every night I go to bed knowing I've built a life on my own terms. Sometimes I look back at that girl, the one scratching off a lottery ticket in her cramped apartment, never expecting anything to change, and I smile. Because she had no idea that her world was about to flip upside down. She had no idea that losing the approval of the people she thought she needed would open the door to something much bigger, her own voice. Her own purpose. Her own freedom. And that, more than the money, more than the foundation, more than any apology I never got, that freedom, is the real win. When all is said and done, the deepest lesson from this story is that silence in the face of injustice only allows it to grow stronger. We don't have to carry unfair treatment, toxic expectations, or old labels placed on us as if they define who we are. Every one of us deserves the chance to stand tall, reclaim our worth, and step forward with dignity. Like the saying goes, true gold fears no fire. It's often through pressure and struggle that we discover our real strength. In everyday life, this means daring to speak up when something feels wrong, refusing to let toxic relationships dictate your value, and breaking away from cycles of prejudice that keep you small. Sometimes that means setting boundaries with people you love. Other times it means challenging a system that quietly tells you you're less than. The truth is, you reap what you sow, and when we sow courage, respect, and kindness, first for ourselves, then for others, we create a life built on real worth and fairness. It's also about perspective. When we learn to see people as layered, complex, and imperfect, just like ourselves, we grow a little softer, more empathetic, and more free. And maybe that's the point, to hold on to self-respect while also expanding our compassion for the diversity of human experience. I'd love to hear what spoke to you the most from this story. Drop a comment below, share your own journey if you faced something similar. Hit the like button if this resonated with you. And subscribe so you won't miss more stories that dig deep into resilience, fairness, and healing. And finally, may you walk away today feeling a little lighter, a little braver, and with the quiet hope that after every storm, peace does return.